Good morning, everybody. Glad to see you here for another Cute for Teams, Champions Using Teams Effectively with your host, Ricardo Wilkins, Stacy Mildenberger, and likely Nash is joining us, I think, probably a little later. So glad to have you here. I do see some new names jumping in, and so again, welcome, but also just a reminder. This is an office hours. We hope folks come with questions. You can put them in chat or come off mute and just talk with us. We switched to the team format to make that interaction easier. We also usually have topics to discuss, if no one else does, but we are certainly primarily here to try to help you with your questions and to help us all be able to use Teams more effectively. So glad you're here. The recordings from past what I call episodes are on YouTube at youtube.com/teamworkcowbell, where you can always find them at aka.ms/Q4Teams, which is probably how you got here. So with all that said, again, glad you're here. If you got any questions, start putting them in chat, or if anybody's got a hot topic and want to come off mute, we're happy for that too. I was trying to think if we even had any announcements, maybe to kick off us with anything new. I know there was a couple of public sector events last week. The days are syncing together. I believe that was last week. So I don't know if anybody attended those and found those to be useful. Specific to Teams, one of them was, and then also just specific to government topics, and technology, hybrid work, and things like that.
There was one on December the 2nd,
right,
that had a lot of our leadership having that discussion around digital transformation in the government. And I think that one was pretty awesome. And then, of course, you and I led one on Wednesday. That was exciting and I think pretty well attended. So hopefully some of the audience here got to take advantage of either of those sessions. Yeah. I can confirm a feature rollout is 100%. We have been watching for post-meeting attendee report download. For some time, we've had in-meeting attendee report available where the organizer could go onto the participants panel and download the attendee report during a meeting. We now have the ability for the organizer to access that attendee report even after the meeting, which is a wonderful leap ahead. And I'm excited about that because I know that's going to be helpful to a lot of my customers here in Florida, and I'm sure other customers across the state. So that attendee report is accessible via the chat thread to the organizer after the meeting. Timothy, do you have a question?
No, I was just going to confirm we got that feature this week, I believe. I'm with the State Department.
Awesome. Yes, I got word from engineering that it was 100% done with rollout. I think I heard Tuesday night or Wednesday night. I can't recall offhand, but everyone should see it now as an organizer. Let me caveat that everyone who has the engagement report setting set for enabled in their tenant will be able to download that report after the meeting.
And I'm looking at the right one here, right, Stacy? Like you said in the chat here.
Yes, that's it.
Yep.
So could I throw out a couple of things that I've seen on it?
Sure.
Number one, I had originally, I think maybe it was in some earlier roadmap items where I thought it was going to be tabbed into the team itself, where the tabs are across the top as you're showing right now. So just in case anybody else has seen it there, it's actually in the chat, right? And just confirm, it only shows up for the organizer, right? Is it in nobody else?
Correct. Yeah, and it is available in the chat, like you mentioned. It will be available as a tab across the top in the next iteration of the feature. And that's being worked on now and is on the roadmap. It's actually a predecessor to have that attendee tab is a predecessor to webinar. So we're working hard, and engineering is working hard and fast to get not only it moved to the tab, but to also have it enabled for that registration tracking piece of the webinar.
Okay, so I guess my question there is what I've been thinking through is, once it becomes a tab, will it be available to everyone then, or is it still limited only to the organizer, and or is there going to be a way, if it is limited, where it can be more than just say one person?
I'll give you my understanding and know that I don't have any preview necessarily in my government tenant, but my understanding is that it will be made available as a tab, and it will still be required that that tab is scoped to the organizer. That said, we will have also being tracked on the roadmap today is the ability to have a co-organizer in the event.
Okay.
So for now, when it's rolled out today, or as it stands today, it's available to the organizer. And in the future, when the co-organizer feature is available, you can name that co-organizer who will also have access to these assets. And it will be as a tab with the meeting rather than appearing in the chat.
Okay, that would be very helpful, because a use case we end up with, I mean, having a co-organizer, where a front office of a large part of the organization, right? And so they send out stuff on behalf of that person. Well, the meeting gets that the senior principal gets assigned as the organizer, right?
Right.
And during the meeting, that means that they can't be doing things, right? So you want to have somebody on the side, and I know some of the webinar features will help solve that as well. But
yeah, absolutely.
I had one other question, not related to this.
Totally fine.
Okay, it has to do with breakout rooms and the full functionality of breakout rooms in GCC. And I have only started playing with it, so I may be behind, but I'm unable to do any breakout rooms management prior to the meeting in my GCC. Is that not available yet? Do you happen to know?
Correct. It's not. What
Okay.
you can do before the meeting now is assign another presenter in the meeting to assist you with the yes, Ricardo's doing it now on his demo tenant.
I'm watching.
You can go in and name another presenter to be a breakout room manager. That is available before the meeting, or at least setting who that person is available before the meeting. I am trying to recall, I don't think I've gotten an update on that particular feature where the organizer will have access to pre-meeting assigning of rooms.
Mm-hmm.
I need to go and look, and perhaps I'll go off camera and see what I can find out about it really quickly. But I believe that is actually overdue at this point. So I'm curious to see what the latest update is around that feature. But it's coming. It's intended. It's just a matter of having it meet all of its compliance rules and everything that has to be adhered to tightly in the government cloud. And then we'll push it out.
Super. One last question on the breakout rooms. Do you need to have a certain number of people in the meeting before you can start assigning the breakout rooms?
I don't think so. I think my testing has shown that even with one attendee, you can start assigning.
Okay. I thought I tried that the other day and it didn't work. The one other
I should clarify, that means there's two people in the meeting.
Yes. Yeah. I had one other person, and when I clicked on assign participants, it said there's nobody here to assign. But let me do a little more research on that. The other question I had on that was, if I send a meeting invite to a group, will those people show up as individual participants? because I've had that happen before. Let's say I do this weekly. I do a meeting with my entire office and I send it to an office, it's a team, but I send it to the group email address, right?
Right.
But then when I go into the meeting, if I want to say I want to make somebody a presenter, it doesn't show anybody in the meeting. So in other words, it's not like it's breaking them out individually.
And this is pre-meeting. This is before anybody joins, right?
It really doesn't matter. I'm going to the Teams option. So this is not breakout room. This is first off, because of that behavior in Teams options, I was wondering if that's also going to impact on the breakout room. So if I invite a group, will it see? Once the meeting starts, I believe it sees them because it sees them as participants. They're there, right?
Right.
But
right.
After they've joined.
Right. But even once they join in the meeting options, where it's showing there, where it says who can present, if I say select a specific person, specific people, it will show me no one.
Right, because they're not a named individual on the list. There's an inference that they're there by the mailing list, right?
Correct.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Even if they've accepted the meeting.
Yeah, but they weren't named on the invite. Yep, I would expect that the breakout rooms would probably have the same limitation where it's only able to inspect the named people on the to and CC line. It's not going to go and expand all of the groups. That may, the simple workaround might be, if it truly is a distribution list, hit the plus button to have it expand the distribution list in your invite. That might get us a little bit of the way there. But I think this is also a good one that we might take back for feedback. Because especially as more of this stuff comes to channel meetings, it's the same thing. It's the group that got invited. I was going to say, it's not a distro list, it's a group, right? I mean, we've set up the team as a group so that sometimes we have to use the email and it's just easier to invite people that way, but we didn't want to make it a channel meeting because some of the channel meeting limitations. But yes, I think you're right. In the future, the same thing would happen for a channel meeting, right?
And I was wondering if a workaround might be, okay, so I don't see anybody here. Is there something I can go do to add some folks explicitly and then come back and it would see it? But I can't really think.
But the issue that happens for us, if I do that, it's going to say update. And so then it's going to send out the invite again, right?
Oh, yeah.
So see, every time that's one of the issues with why you want on these meetings in particular, because otherwise you're sending, it depends on, people may not get it if it goes to the group, but anyway, it's kicking off invites to an email box all the time.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to dominate, but I had just a couple questions there.
So we're here for.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm taking down this as a some feedback for engineering, because I agree. It would be phenomenal if we could have the group be expanded by default after it's selected and sent to.
I mean, at a minimum, I don't know if it makes a difference if people accepted it, right? So then, whatever be the easiest would be a full expansion just right from the get-go.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent points.
Anything else out there? Hot topics?
So I have a question, and we've got some tickets open with Microsoft. So I don't want to talk about the tickets, but I just want to know how it should work. So when you record a meeting, everyone who's been invited to that meeting should have access to the recording, correct? Not just the people that attend?
Everyone who was invited to the meeting at the time of the recording started.
So okay, yeah.
And when I say everyone, I mean every internal person.
Right. Even if they don't actually join the meeting, they could still get to that after, or they're supposed to get to that after the meeting, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's not happening for us, and that's the ticket. I just wanted to make sure that's how it's supposed to work, because the people that didn't join the meeting can't now see the recording unless we go into OneDrive and, share it and all that fun stuff.
But if the invite is forwarded, those people can't, right?
And so that makes sense.
But I think it has to do with, realize what's happening is that it's being recorded in the team substrate and then copied to your OneDrive. when it gets copied to your OneDrive, it's got to have a list of people who should have access to it. If you don't know who was invited to the meeting because it was forwarded and not connected, like how it can't do that inference.
But that OneDrive list should have everybody invited to the meeting, regardless of whether or not they attended.
Yeah, I'm gonna quick see if I can pull up the.
Okay.
Yeah, here we go. The documentation for when we were starting to do the switch from Stream to OneDrive, because I think it calls it out there.
Yeah, because that's not working for us. So.
And that's a good question. I know. So I'm not sure on the answer. I'm glad we're looking it up because I sometimes do. We're double book, triple book so often. I will sometimes jump into a meeting and jump out just to make sure I'm can access the recording. That seems to be, so certainly when you join, you're in. And sometimes just because I'm not sure how that works, I jump in just to make sure I can get at that recording. So yeah, I agree. That's a interesting scenario.
Well, and then I went down a OneDrive rabbit hole because there's like 4 different links you can share, and it's just like, which link do I share? Do I want to add permission? It just, once you start sharing it out, it gets a little complicated.
But I will say that is one advantage to it being moved to OneDrive, is that whatever does happen or doesn't happen, at least you do have the flexibility of the sharing feature, so that, okay, this didn't work out the way I expect, but let me go in and hit share. And I guess if there's hundreds of people, it's still a problem, but you can certainly modify the permissions in flexible ways, including with external folks in ways you couldn't have done, in the past. So
it's nice. And I know a lot of it's just a learning curve on my part, but because I just, OneDrive, I get kind of lost sometimes. So.
Yeah, there's a lot more complexity to it, and that is both a benefit and a downside. Yep. Kimberly, I did throw a screenshot of the documentation into our chat.
Thank you.
And I'll just read it out loud for a recording that, it in the FAQ for the changeover, underneath who has permissions to view the meeting recording, for non-channel meetings, all meeting invitees, except for external users, will automatically get a personally shared link.
Okay.
So now, what is a meeting invitee? It maybe is ambiguous. To me, I think it's everyone named on the invite should have gotten the ability to see it. And if that's not happening, great, open the support case. Engineering might come back and be like, well, there's these 8 caveats on it. Great, then let's get this documentation updated to talk about that, because the word all and meeting and invitees doesn't have 8 caveats to it. It's got 1, except for external users.
One thing that I think we saw on that, there was a change, I think it was about 6 months ago, on kind of the way certain invitees were categorized. And we started seeing a lot in the meeting chat where it's like somebody would join the meeting and then it would, at the end, it would say they no longer have access. Right. And I think we started to see that was somewhat based on whether the invite had been forwarded, but I also think it was driving a little bit on whether they would not then have access to the recording because they couldn't get back to the chat. So would that factor into it?
Well, I'm going to guess that the concept is going to factor into it, but they are different changes, and there are more changes coming to we'll call it chat security, like who has access to the chat. While I loved the fact that chat was for a meeting was just a group chat, we ran into over and over and over again people having recurring meetings where they'd have a special guest one week, and then the next week not realize that the special guest was a member of their group chat until we removed them from that recurring meeting, and sharing sensitive information in the chat that they didn't realize that the group was wider than who they saw. That's a feature. That was a feature, right? This is designed to break down silos. But if you don't realize that silo has been broken down, it's a disaster in some cases. Sure. So we did say, all right, we're having enough people not intuitively know how this works. So we're going to change how it works, where, if you're not added to a meeting or invited to the series of the meeting, you get to use chat while you're there, and when you leave, you no longer get to use chat. So there are more changes coming to that will I think are supposed to get announced in January, but that was the knee-jerk reaction to the immediate issue that was escalated to our senior leadership.
So how are people designated that way? Again, the only thing we saw was like if the invite had been forwarded, is there kind of just some documentation or kind of a standard description of how someone ends up being temporary in it?
So remember that anybody with the meeting link can join the meeting, right? I think the difference is when you use that meeting link, were you a named invitee? Like, did you show up when you weren't in there? Did you show up in the participants list as not here yet or not present? What is it you normally say there?
Yes.
If you're in that list down there, when you join, you're going to be a full member of the meeting chat.
Okay.
If you're not, you're probably going to be a temporary one. I don't think I have documentation I can point to though, except for like a blog post from months ago talking about this is what we're thinking about. But I'm gonna hit the search engine here and see if I
that's
can
fine. No, I think that helps clarify it. So yeah, because I had forgotten that use case. Obviously, the forward is the same thing as sharing the link, but some people, in fact, have been doing that where they copy the link out of the invite and then they share it around. And so yes, that makes sense. So somebody who's on the to line by name, not even that is definitely people who are going to have full access, right?
Right.
That's my understanding, but I can't point to any documentation that I've been able to find yet. So I'm still working on that. So this stuff started actually rolling out to commercial back in April, but it didn't hit GCC right away. So it's one of those things where I think I ignored a lot of the communication about it back in April because they're like, we don't know when it's coming to GCC.
Yeah.
I think if I remember correctly, it seemed to be very onerous in the beginning, and then it seemed like a few weeks later it adjusted and it wasn't quite as bad. So I don't know if there was some adjustment in the rollout or what, but it hasn't been a major factor for us, but sometimes it is. I've got one other question. Again, I don't want to dominate, but I have another question if nobody else has questions.
Go for
Yeah,
it.
feel free.
Okay. This actually has to do with, and I think it's a relatively new feature in GCC, the email notifications of assignment of a task in Planner.
Email notifications or notifications in Teams?
I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah. Chat.
Notification in team, because the email notification has always been going out, but it goes to the group. And so, we always have problems with people not following the groups, right? So yes. So obviously, I think a lot of people have been asking for that. The immediate question I got from people was, well, what about if somebody makes a change to that tasking, and so I don't know if there's any plans, that any kind of update to the task, will there be some follow-on notification? So like, it's almost like people could follow the task, right? And want to know what's going on. Because I think in the past, if you did you could do an @mention in the comments of the chat. I'm sorry, the comments of the task. But it's kind of like it's the beginning part, but people are like, yeah, okay, but I still, if I'm going to track the thing fully, how do I do that? And I realize more and more we're telling people to put the Planner app in the left rail, because that's that view helps you see everything that's going on. Yeah, that's the view I was talking about.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I totally get the use case, wanting to have a single task and then follow the whole life cycle of it, all the additions and conversations and whatnot that are happening there. So I don't have an answer to that, but just to again highlight that question, because like a particular task like this one has a link to it, right? And I've seen folks take that link into their team, right? You blah blah blah, you pop it in there and have a conversation about it from that point. And so I think my clipboard in this demo is not working right because I can't seem to copy paste, but start a conversation, you get a nice link to the task, which opens up in Teams, and then conversation from that point. And so then the question to me becomes, well, where's the better place to have the conversation, in the thread of the task or in the team? I'd probably lean more towards the team just because that's kind of that comprehensive one-stop shop for the team. But that comment, that thread area is right there in the task. It just seems so convenient. So yeah, some kind of notification of that activity would definitely be useful. Kind of give you two places to talk and be sure that you're not going to miss the conversation, because that's
the biggest thing is people missing things, right? That's they've been assigned a task and now, or maybe there's two people on the task and somebody's working on it, etc.
Yep.
So
yeah, the whole, hey, the notification works that you have a task that's expired, but then you don't get an email notification that you got assigned a task.
Right.
Frustrating.
Right.
Yeah, not expired, but it's late. Had one of those this morning. He's like, oh, I didn't catch that I got this. It is on the roadmap. I shouldn't say it's on the roadmap. It is documented in the planner for Gov documentation that email notifications for individual assignments and due dates are planned, but we don't know for when. So I'll throw that link in the chat to that documentation, but it is. I will also call out that it still says it's planned for the notifications in Teams, but that's actually already released. So I did just hit my little feedback button to say, hey, we missed switching this to yes. But we'll get that updated quick here. So once we do get the email notifications, I think the hey, I missed it, a lot of that will go away, because you got both a Teams notification, and even if you weren't following every item from the group, which can generate a ton of noise, like even if you did get assigned one, you saw everybody's assignments, and that's not particularly helpful in a big noisy group. Once we get to just individual notifications, this gets way easier.
So that email notification is to the individual's email address. Right. I mean, I did a Power Automate that does the same thing.
Ricardo taught me how to do that forever ago. It was one of my first Power Automates.
Right. So.
Yeah, Power Automate. I don't want to use the word hack in this scenario, but yes, it is a good workaround for where you might find your notifications lacking in some areas. And in fact, I feel like it's not just hey, I can't get a notification here, so I'll make a simple one here. It actually could kind of one up some of the other notifications, because you can do more than just an email. One, obviously, it could be an email, but it could be formatted as richly as you want it to be, whether that's agency logos and things like that, or any headers and footers, if you really want to get fancy with it. But other actions as well. Maybe I want email, Teams and something else. Maybe I want to, in addition to that notification, pop something in a spreadsheet or or a SharePoint page. So yes, it's good for, hey, I wish I had a notification here, let me just make one. But it's also good for really just building out a full-blown process related to that notification, because there may be other actions you wish would happen when that other thing occurred. So it's great for that. In our last little minute here, I know in the chat we were talking about the feature guide, and someone was saying they really appreciate it. I know all of my customers appreciate it. I share it often, but this is trying to keep track of all of the latest updates and keep them in front of customers in one spot. Stacy's been doing a terrific job with that, and so hopefully whether in the recording or whether you saw me typing, hopefully you saw that. Well, if you're live, you saw it, see it in the chat, but on the recording, hopefully you saw the link to that, the AKAMS link. But this is good stuff here.
Thanks, Ricardo. Yeah, it's been a pleasure to work on it, and I'm excited to have an update the next day or so. And then, yes, the plans are to keep building it out quarter by quarter. So, looking forward to keeping it rolling.
Yeah. So we thank everybody for coming today. Great conversation. Again, this will be posted to the YouTube playlist, aka.ms/Q4Teams. So you can check it out there, and then we will check you out next week, same time, same place.
Super. These are great. Thanks for doing these.
It's really super. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you guys for joining.
Bye.